Well, it definitely is a tough time in the mining sector right now with mining stocks of all sizes, from the smallest to the largest, having a very challenging period. But out of challenging period often comes the best time to make money for investors. And that's what we're going to talk about on today's show here at the AlanBerryReports.com. I'm Alan Barry Labucan. I've been in the mining sector since the early 1990s, and I've seen some very tough markets. I know it's a tough market right now, maybe as tough as it was in the late 1990s. I think it's not quite as bad. Back then, there was virtually no money in the sector. Now, at least, there's a lot more money, and there's some projects out there that have found some very impressive discoveries that are being quite significantly underpriced. But it definitely is a challenging period. And over the years, I've had a lot of success in finding sort of the litmus test that I judge myself on is what's happening with the between the when a company is either taken over or it advances from junior explorer into producer status. And almost 50% of the companies that I've picked over the years since I started my report in 2005 fit into those categories. Now, why they fit into those categories is because, and why I've been good at finding those, is I've always been able to accurately sort of categorize companies. And in the past, the key thing that I looked for was I was always trying to find the companies that were run by people that were putting holes in the ground and trying to find a mine. Then there was a whole other group of companies that are are run by stock promoters who a lot of times are really trying to mine the public. They're trying to hype up their stock on nothing and cash out a bunch of and make a bunch of money that way. They have no intention of really finding a mine. And so whenever I would look over news releases in the past, my goal was to try to differentiate between those that were actually trying to find a mine and those that were trying to mine the public. I always avoided the ones that tried to mine the public. Now, some of those stocks went up, but I had no interest in those kind of companies. I was always much more interested in the kind of companies that that were looking to try to find a mine, because those are the companies that would either get taken over by a bigger company or become a mining company themselves. And that's why, due to all my experience, why I had a high success rate, again, of almost 50% of the companies that I picked falling into that success category. Now, there's something that I'm seeing happening in the market right now. In fact, if you're on my website and you look below me in some of the videos, you're going to see one that was, I did a talk at the World Money Show in Vancouver in April. And in that, I talked about a subject that I think can really help investors out quite dramatically. And that's how I'm putting companies into sort of different buckets, okay? So one group of companies in the mining sector are what I call the zombies. These are companies that have very little in the way of projects and very little in the way of money. They are virtually walking dead. And in my opinion, John Kaiser, I did an interview with him a few months ago. He recently did a study, and he analyzed all the companies out there, and he found that there are 700 companies, or a little more than 700 companies, that have less than $200,000 in cash, which isn't enough for them to fund their sustaining fees and their legal fees, and really to stay as a publicly traded company. There's about 700 on the venture exchange that are in that category. These are the companies that I would like to see them die a very quick death. They're doing nothing positive in the market. They're basically shell companies. I hate to see investors put their money into those kind of companies because they're doomed to lose their money. These companies are going nowhere. They're run by people that don't have the leadership or the abilities to bring those companies forward. I know that that is tough medicine to take. If I were one of those zombie managers of zombie companies, I would take a close look at myself and my skills and my lack of skills, and I would try to partner up with other companies that have the skills that I don't have. But that takes a lot of self-awareness that unfortunately a lot of these companies don't have. They also take up space in the industries, the investor's mind. When investors have so many options out there, they've got to look through so many companies to try to find the actual winners. With a quarter or so of them being these zombie kind of companies, they get in the way, they clutter up the scene, they make things difficult for investors to find the quality through the trees. They can't see the forest through the trees because there are so many of these zombie companies that are cluttering up the market. I wish that they would be gone tomorrow. It would be a very good thing for the kind of companies that I look for, the real companies that are trying to find a mine and build a company. It would make it a lot easier for them, because then instead of those tight finances that are out there, these zombie companies wouldn't be taking up any money or any of people's ability to find things, and they'd be gone. I think that they're best in that category. I'd like to see the zombies die fast. There's another group of companies that I call the dormant companies. These are companies that there's a few different kinds of dormant companies. There's a dormant company that has a project but no money. Then there's a dormant company that has money but no project. I think the best thing for those kind of companies is to try to get together. I think we should see a bunch of consolidation of these companies, which would shrink the overall amount of small mining companies that are out there even more. Get rid of the zombies, consolidate the dormants that have a project and no money, or those that have money and no project. Get them together, get rid of a bunch more companies. That's another great advantage. Now, there's another kind of dormant company, and this one really frustrates me, and I think it should frustrate the shareholders as well. There's these companies out there that have money and they have projects. But what they've decided to do is they've scaled back their work quite dramatically. So they're not really out there trying to do something for their shareholders by finding something, and they're not out there marketing their companies. They're really doing nothing for their shareholders, and these kind of companies really, I think the shareholders should be up in arms with the management of these kind of companies. They have their job, and why they're hired by the shareholders is to enhance the value of what the company owns and to unlock shareholder value. By cutting back on their exploration work and their development work, and cutting back on the marketing that they do to try and get the word out there to more shareholders that will come in and potentially buy their stock, they're really doing nothing for their shareholders. And these kind of companies, I think, should be put their foot to the fire. I'd love to see more shareholders get up in arms and start demanding from these kind of companies, what are you doing for me? I'm a shareholder of your company. What are you doing for me? Because in reality, what most of these companies are doing is they're looking after their managements themselves. That's the only people that they're really looking after. They're conserving cash. They're not putting it into the ground or into marketing their company. They're conserving cash so that they can make sure and they keep getting paychecks for the long term. These kind of companies, I really, like I said, I'd like to see more shareholders revolting against these kind of companies and demanding that the management does something for the shareholders. That's their job. That's what they get compensated for. That's what they get options at cheap prices for. It's to do something for their shareholders, and they should be doing that. And I'd like to see more shareholders standing up and demanding that. Now, the key kind of company that I like to look at right now are those that I call the leaders. And why I like to look at those kind of companies right now, I'm not just looking for them to talk about on my shows. I'm also looking to work with those kind of companies. I've had a consulting business where I help companies with their strategic planning, their branding, their digital marketing, and I've been doing this for a long time. In the last 6 or 7 years, as I was working a lot on my allenberryreports.com, I kind of let my consulting business die down. And I see so many things out there that I think a lot of public companies could use my assistance in, that I've decided to sort of make the Allen Berry Reports not just a place where investors can come to find good companies, but also a place where I can showcase the companies I'm working with to help them find good investors. And so it's really a symbiotic relationship. And I stand by my work. I put a lot of work out there in the past. In the past, I've worked for and had companies advertising on my website, and I've always been balanced in the way that I report on the companies that I follow, regardless of whether and I always tell the audience when there is that kind of a relationship that someone is working with me, and I've always been balanced in the way that I report on companies. My work is testament to that, and I stand by what I do. I don't give anybody preferential treatment when I'm covering what they're doing. I try to cover every company exactly the same. And so the companies that I think are what investors want to look for are also the kind of companies that I want to work with. These are companies that have management that I think are leaders. These are companies that I think why I think in a tough market, why I think somebody can lead and others tend to follow or go dormant or are zombies, because they don't have the vision of where things are going in the long term. And I think that there are a lot of reasons extremely bullish on what's happening right now. I am seeing a lot of similarities between pre-2001 and today. Why that's so critically important, I've been talking and writing about this a lot. Why that's so critically important is 2001 was when the greatest bull market in commodities started. And why it started was because of what happened prior to 2001. In that couple decade period prior to 2001, there was less spending on exploration, not enough spending to look after the demand coming from the emerging and developed economies that happened post-2001. It was called the lost decade in the industry, and what happened was a lot of people stopped studying geosciences in university, so there was not enough quality people going through the system, and these things made it difficult for the supply chain. Not enough money and expenditures on exploration, not enough good people. It created a tightness in the supply, which was one of the key factors of why many commodities went flying up in post-2001. And let's face it, even though a lot of them have corrected lately in the last year and a half, the reality is they are still significantly higher than where they were in 2001. But I think we've now reached a base where we can launch from again, because we're seeing the history is repeating itself again. Since 2008, when the economic collapse of the global economy happened, the exploration dollars and the development dollars for resources like, or key commodities like gold, silver, copper, oil, uranium, plenty of other commodities, rare earth elements, platinum, palladium, all of these key commodities that are needed for economic growth, there has been an under expenditures in exploration again. Then you go back and look at the people situation. And back in the 1990s, during that lost decade, that's what it's called in the mining sector, a lot of those people that were around, even though there was less of them, a lot of those people are now reaching retirement age. And they've made some money in the last few years. They really have no interest in pounding their heads against a tough market, so they're going to retire. So there's less and less of the good people that are needed. And so these things are all going to squeeze the supply chain. And as that supply chain squeezes, we're also seeing that the U.S. economy is starting to get stronger. While the U.S. economy gets stronger, that will inevitably lead to the emerging economies getting stronger, because they make a lot of what gets imported into the United States and other developed economies. And so as the U.S., the leader of the global economy, gets stronger, it's going to have a trickle-down effect where those other economies are going to get stronger as well. When that happens, there's going to be a great deal more demand for those commodities that I talked about that are having a tough time on the supply chain. This is what's going to set up the next big leg up in the long-term bull market that commodities have been on since 2001. And if a company is being run by a leader who has some vision, they can see this. And those are the kind of companies that I think will make shareholders a lot of money when the economy turns around. And here's a simple reason why. When the commodity, not the economy, the commodities, when the commodity prices turn around and get stronger, there are plenty of stocks, quality, what I feel are being led by real leaders. Those stocks have been suppressed so low that it's ridiculous. A lot of these companies are trading at cash value or less than cash value. When they start moving, they're because all the sellers have sold. There's not a lot of sellers out there. The demand that's going to come into these fairly illiquid stocks is going to drive the prices up quite dramatically. And the ones that are going to lead that charge are going to be those that have leaders in management. And a good way to tell if a company is being led by a true leader, someone with vision, is to look at what they're doing in the market right now. They keep in mind that to build a company takes time. And a lot of companies I see kind of have management that has one foot in the I'm building a company and the other foot in, well, what's happening with the stock price? And I don't think that that's a very good way to build a company. You see your stock price down, does that mean, well, we're going to stop building a company? No. It takes leadership to look through what's happening on a day-to-day fluctuation in their stock price to say, I can see what's coming, and I have to prepare for that, and that's why I'm doing certain things now. Key indicators of leaders in management is to look at these companies that right now are doing a bunch of work, even though it's a tough time. I'm finding a lot of companies that have leaders. I'm approaching those companies about working with them, about getting them to put banners on my website, because I think that they're the ones that deserve to have a better audience, because they're doing something for their shareholders. They're trying to build a company that's going to take advantage of what I think are very bullish prices for the key commodities that they're involved with down the road. And the great way to look at that is to just look at the companies that are putting out news, or contact those companies and see what they're trying to do to advance the company. You know, a lot of them are talking, I talk to a lot of companies and I get things like, well, we're not doing any marketing right now, we're not doing any exploration, we're trying to raise money, but because the stock is so low right now, we don't want to raise money at these prices. So my question in my mind when I'm hearing this is, so how is the stock going to go up if you're not doing anything? Is it just supposed to because you hope to do a private placement at a higher price? Right now, those that do accept my phone, that's another indicator. I call a lot of companies. What I do every day is I go through all the news releases of mining companies, and I see those that are making news that interests me. Not these ones that are talking about rollbacks and share consolidations and not are raising little amounts of money, things like that. I'm looking for those that are doing some drilling, trying to find something, or and I call these companies, and a lot of times I can't even get a person on the phone, or I'll leave a message and I can't don't get back to me, which is really boggles my mind because here I am. I'm a fairly well-known newsletter writer. I've been doing reports on the mining sector a long time. I've been on BNN probably 30 times on television to talk because the media wanted my opinion on the sector and my picks. So I do have an audience out there, and I'm trying to talk to my audience about your company, and you don't pick up the phone and they don't return my phone calls. These are companies I put sometimes into that dormant category where they're not doing anything to try and get the story out there. But then there's a lot of companies that get on the phone right away and want to talk to you about what they're doing on the ground. Either they see something happening that they're trying to build their project or do work on their project. That's the litmus test of those that are really out there trying to lead in a difficult market. They're the ones that are trying to put holes in the ground. They're the ones that are trying to grow their audience and market themselves to the investors out there. Because as tough as it is out there right now, there are still a lot of investors out there. There are contrary investors that see that now is the perfect time to be buying these stocks because they're trading at rock bottom prices. And because they're trading at rock bottom prices, and what is happening in the industry is setting up the market to go much higher for commodities and for those those companies that have leaders running those companies. And so there are contrary investors, but if you're not doing anything to get your story out there and market your story, and you're not doing any work, how are you going to, what is your prospects for the future? You're certainly not going to be those that are on the leading edge when the commodity prices get much stronger, get much more bullish, and investors are trying to find those stocks that will outperform and do very well. And so that is the key thing that I can tell people to look for right now that have vision themselves and think that there's a turnaround coming, is to look for those companies that are in my leaders bucket. Look for those companies that are not the zombies. Get rid of the zombies if you have any. They're not going to do you any good. The dormants, you have to kind of look and see, are some of those that are that have projects and no money, or those that have money and no projects, are they trying to find somebody to get involved with, somebody to marry, if you will, where they can, in the case of those with money, can find a company with a project and put those two together? Or the other way around, do you have a project and are you looking for a company with money to get together and build something for the future? Those kind, you got to weigh those options. I will even look at those. The ones that I have a difficult time with right now are the ones that are in the dormant category, where they have good projects and they have money and they're pulling in their horns and they're not doing a lot for the shareholders. Those I'd be a little less excited about. I think it's much, there will be some winners in there. I don't think that they'll be as big a winners as they could be, because they've shown themselves to be sort of, a dormant company that comes to life that takes a little bit of time to do that. I think instead the biggest one that investors, and what I'm going to try and bring to my viewers as companies that I'm working with, or that have banners on my site, or that are going to be part of my interview series that I'm working on right now of launching, are the leaders, the companies that are in the leaders bucket. Those are the companies that right now are led by people who are trying to build a company and can see into the future and have good projects and are working on those projects. They're out there. I'm working hard to find them for you, but they're out there, and that's what I'll continue to do. So on that note, I don't know, I think we ran a little over what I was expecting to do, as I always do. But I hope that you find that helpful, and we'll be doing more of these shows in the future here at www.allenbarryreports. That's ALLANBARRYREPORTS.com. And if you're watching the show on the website, look to my left there, and you're going to see some companies that have banners on my website. Those are the companies that I think are doing work and are trying to build in a tough market. And I'm going to try and find a whole bunch more of those to add to the that part of the website. On that note, have a great day.